think everything is ready here. Let's see. That's off. That's turned off. That's turned off. That's turned on. The stream appears to be live. Looks like it's live anyway. I think we're good to go. Hello! Shadowcat back! Yes! We're doing this again. It's the 5th time we're at the keywords and we're only like 25% done. I'm hoping that we can make up some time quickly because that means that we're currently doing like 5% of this list every time we do it. And that means that it would take like 20 of these sessions to get through all this. So that's kind of a lot. I don't really like the idea of doing this 20 times in a row. So I think without further ado, we're gonna we're gonna get into it and see how many we can get through, because like I gotta get through more than this. Let me just get the calculator out, and we have about 175-ish. If I divide that by 20, because it seems to be on, or what we're doing right now, that is, we'll round it up and say 9 a day. We gotta aim for 10 at least. Okay, we gotta aim for 10 at least. We can do this. I know we can do this. So let's get into it. First things first, though. I see that Blizzard Star is in the chat. Hello, Blizz. You're going to get a wave. There's a wave. Good to see you here. Good to have you here. I don't know anybody else who's in the chat right now, but we'll get to them as we get to things. So, to do this, we're going to need the usual. We need to have, of course, a browser with all of our stuff on it. And we're going to need to have our spreadsheet, so that we have something to write everything down on. Alright, and then we got to figure out exactly where we left off. So let's go back to the spreadsheet and see where we are there. Right, so we were just going through all the stuff in the Kamigawa set. We did the Bushido, Soul Shift, Splice, Offering, Ninjutsu. All of those things came from Kamigawa. And now we're on to Epic. I have no idea what Epic is or what Epic does, so we're going to find out together. I mean, I do have Magic cards. I have played Magic. I've played it a fair amount. But I could never keep up with it because, let's face it, as hobbies go, it's kind of expensive. I mean, though, is that fair? Is that unfair? Like, every hobby is kind of expensive when you think about it. It's just a matter of, you know, where do you want to put your resources? As I've said before, in many things, you show what you care about by what you do. And, like, if you really care about this, then you don't mind the cost of it. I didn't care about it enough, and so I said I can't spend this much money on cards. Which is why I'm learning so many things as we're going through and doing this. So, let's get over here to keywords, and we need Epic. It's in here somewhere. There it is. Yeah. So we're up to number 50. What does Epic do? Oh, we're still in Kamigawa. Okay, well, that's a thing. I thought we were done with it. Alright, here we go. Epic is a keyword ability of 5 sorceries from the Saviors of Kamigawa. In keep with the block's legendary theme, the design is intended to provide an answer to the question of, what does it mean for an instant or a sorcery to be legendary? So it has only appeared, or it has appeared only once on a cycle of 5 cards, all of them being sorceries. And apparently there's one for each color. So there is Enduring Ideal, See if I can get this down here where everyone can see it. Good enough. Cost 7. And search your library for an enchantment card, put it into play, then shuffle your library. Epic! For the rest of the game, you can't play spells. At the beginning of each upkeep, copy this spell except for its epic ability. Huh. Wait, so... why would you do that? Everything is a spell. Every creature is a spell. Every artifact is a spell. Every permanent that you put onto the field is a spell unless otherwise stated. Do they all do this, or is that just the white one? Eternal Domination. Search target opponent's library for an artifact, creature, enchantment, or land card, then put that into play under your control. Then that player shuffles his or her library. Epic. For the rest of the game, you can't play spells. At the beginning of your upkeep, copy this spell except for its epic ability. You may choose a new target for the copy. So yeah, it seems like it doesn't matter what card it is, Epic stops you from playing cards. I mean, except for specifically what it does. Never-ending Torment. Search target player's library for X cards, where X is the number of cards in your hand, and remove them from the game. Then, that player shuffles his or her library. Epic, for the rest of the game, you can't play spells. So, this is going to be like the last thing that you play, because you're not playing anything after it. So, Never-ending Torment... you play this, and basically just every turn you're going to be removing 7 cards, or eventually 7 cards, because you can only hold 7 cards at a time, from the opponent. Now that's going to be interesting because that's a thing. The number of cards in your hand. Since you're not holding cards in your hand, we'll need to figure out some kind of rule for that. We're not going to do it right now. We have to put a pin in that one. Yeah, this is going to be weird. In exchange for this powerful ability, the player cannot cast spells for the rest of the game, period. Yeah. I gotta think about this one for a minute. This is weird. Hey, and PC Unicorn's in here. Hello. It's good to see you again. You get a wave. There you go. It's good to see you here. PC Unicorn says, yep, it's the final move from your library. Okay, yeah, I'm getting that. So, I mean, I don't hate it. What I think we're going to do is, since it has got to be it's got to be the last thing that you do. That means that this has got to somehow use up the rest of the charges that you have available. So, how do we do this? See, what's very interesting is it says, like if I look at the Never-ending Torment, now it says that target players library for X cards, where X is the number of cards in your hand and exile them. So, cards in your hand. Those are things that you can play. Technically, your library is all cards that you can play. Your hand is all cards that you can play. We already have numbers for that. And it's over here, under the Planeswalkers. It's the number of spells per day. This is your deck, right here. Now, you don't really have a hand, But you do have a deck, which is why at level 20 it goes all the way up to 60. 60 card deck, which, you know, used to be the old standard and still actually is the standard in Constructed, which I guess nobody plays anymore. Either way. So, that's spells per day. Well, actually, no, kinda not. So, this is gonna be... actually, no, I gotta look at this differently. That's not, your library. This is your hand. The spell's known. This is your library. Well, I mean, they're kind of both. Because when you run out of cards in your library, you lose the game. Similarly, when you run out of spells per day, that's also pretty much the end of anything you can do as a planeswalker, except for direct whatever you've already got on the field. What I think we need to do is I think that whenever you do this, whatever effect that it does has to be tied to this number. As PC Unicorn stated, it is your final move. Now, the way these seem to work is that you can do this multiple times. So when we look at like Undying Flames, because I haven't even looked at this one yet. Undying Flames. Remove cards from the top of your library from the game until you remove a non-land card. Undying Flames deals damage equal to target creature or player equal to its converted mana cost. Which is great. And then, every turn, you can just continue to pummel your opponent with this. Since you can't play anything else except for this, which just copies on repeat, you're just going to keep flipping cards and dealing damage. Which, I want that card. I don't know about the rest of them, but I'm a red player. I want that card. That's a good card. So this is a really complicated one. I don't know how we're going to do this. I don't know if I'm ready for this one. So maybe we just gotta break this down. The first thing that happens, let's break this down into its individual constituent parts, because it seems to be the only way to really go about this. So for the rest of the game, you can't play spells. All right, let's write this down, okay? For the rest of the game, you can't play spells. Next, at the beginning of each upkeep, copy this spell. So at the beginning of each upkeep, copy this spell. Now, interestingly, I do notice that it does not say you may copy this spell. It says, at least on Neverending Torment here, you may choose a new target, but you may not choose not to copy this spell. Once it is in motion, it is forever in motion. You are now committed. So, first things first. We have to go with, for the rest of the game, you can't play spells. I do believe that this is... Well, I can see why it's important, because then people might try to play spells in addition to copying this. And so we can't allow that. This one's gonna be so complicated. I wonder if it's if I just were to copy it over word for word, would that work? So for the rest of the game, well, not the rest of the game necessarily, but for the rest of, I suppose, combat, for the remainder of combat, you cannot play any other spells. I think we can do that. For the remainder of combat, you cannot play any other spells from your list. Now, at the beginning of each upkeep, you copy this spell. So every turn you must cast this spell as a standard action. Now, if I do that, every turn you must cast this spell as a standard action. No, that's wrong. Because that is implying that you kind of have to pick doing it. You're not choosing to do it. It remains in effect. So every turn this spell takes effect until end of combat, or you run out of spells per day. Now, for these spells, let me look. So, Enduring Ideal costs 7. Eternal Domination costs 10. Never-Ending Torment costs 6. Undying Flames costs 6. And Endless Swarm, put a 1/1 green snake creature token into play for each card in your hand. Oh no. First we had squirrels. Now we have snakes. And this one costs 8. So, like, the cheapest one you're getting is either going to be black or red, and they both cost 6. If we look at our Planeswalker, by the time you have 6 mana available, you'll have 18 casts per day. Now, that means that at level 6, you will have picked up 2 spells. If both of them cost 6, and one of them is the Epic, then technically speaking, you could be doing... And let's understand how this is going to work, because... let's just take the red card, for example. It does damage equal to the converted mana cost on the card. So, the damage is going to be 6, more than likely. The converted mana cost is also 6, which means that every single turn, it would be dealing 6d6 damage to a single target. However, you are unable to do anything but that. And I do believe that's something that I need to put in here. So This continues until combat is done or you run out of spells per day. You may take only move actions in addition to this spell on each turn. Okay? So this has to happen every turn. You have to do it every turn. And you can move while you're doing it, but that's it. I think that'll do it. So you can move and cast, you can stand there and cast, but either way, once the first domino has fallen, once you cast this spell, you're locked into it. PC Unicorn says you can continue to activate effects like artifacts on the field. Good point. So anything that's already in play, I guess, is unaffected. Which means that if you have creatures on the field who have activated abilities, they can still do that. If you have artifacts on the field which have effects, they can still be used. I don't think that I need to add that. Actually, that's interesting. Oh, okay, that's a really good point now that I think about it. Because here's the thing. Activating effects on artifacts. I do believe if I understand Magic the Gathering right, unless otherwise specified, activating an artifact is an instant effect. So just like I can play Shock whenever I want to, so long as I have the mana, I can tap the mana and use an artifact on anybody's turn. Because it is an instant effect, I do not believe that I need a rule for that here, because casting a spell is a standard ability. Unless it either has flash, well yeah, unless it has flash, or it is an instant card. Everything is a standard action. Now, that being said, since activating an artifact would be an instant effect, I think it's fine. Because, in general, unless otherwise stated, you can take one instant action a turn that will not interrupt the rest of your turn. So I think we're still good there. And obviously, creatures with activated abilities can use those activated abilities on their turn. They have their own turn. So I think we're still good. And I think that should do it for Epic. That one is super complicated. I can kind of see why it didn't make a comeback. So let's move on. Still though, Undying Flames. I gotta get me one of those. Okay, Epic. Next is Convoke. What is Convoke? Is it still Kamigawa? No! We're finally getting out of Kamigawa. We're moving to Ravnica. So, Convoke is a keyword ability associated with the Selesnya. Sounds Russian. Guild from Ravnica, City of Guilds. The mechanic was originally devised by Richard Garfield. Well, who wants an ability made by a cat? Convoke works by allowing a player to tap creatures rather than pay some of the mana cost for a spell. Each creature that is tapped pays for either one or more mana of one of the creature's colors. By nature, this is a green ability, turning green's affinity for creatures into a way to accelerate big spells. I feel like this is nothing new. Haven't we been doing this with elves forever? Though, as the Celestia Guild mechanic is also found in white, a color also known for having many creatures. Nonetheless, in Magic 2015, there are convoke spells for all colors and on artifacts. Okay, so I want to see some examples before we get into this. Rulings. Okay, here we go. The Conclave Equinaut. Let's take a look. The Conclave Equinaut costs 4 and 2 white to play for a 3/3, which is kind of ridiculous. However, that's why they gave it Convoke. It is intentionally expensive, because they don't want you to play it without Convoke. Your creatures can help cast this spell. Each creature you tap while casting this spell pays for 1 or 1 mana of the creature's color. Okay, I think I understand that. I think it's phrased a little bit weird, but they probably did that for brevity. I think that means that if it's a little card that costs like 1 plus white, you can tap that card either for its 1 or for its white. Meaning that you can use them to pay for the color requirement or for just the general mana requirement. This actually is going to bring in the question of what does it mean to tap? Because this is now actually very important. You need to tap a creature to pay for this. Now, this does not translate perfectly over to Pathfinder, but I do believe we can make it work. If you tap a creature, that creature can then do nothing. It cannot attack, it cannot defend, it cannot use its activated abilities, it cannot do anything. Its action is spent. The equivalent to that, of course, would be for that creature to essentially lose its turn. What I believe would have to happen is that to make this work, it would require you to actually steal the turns from the creatures that you have on the field. So let's just say that I'm fighting bandits, okay? And I'm fighting 4 bandits. So we got bandit times 4, and then there's me, the planeswalker, of course. And I'm just going to go with my red deck because it's the easiest one, and my red deck has goblins. So I've got goblins, goblin, and we'll just say that they are times 4, and I want to summon a red thing. Can I find a red thing? That's a green thing. What's a red card with Convoke? Can I find that? Color. I want red. And rules, I want Convoke. Let's do a search. That's an instant card, that's a sorcery card, that's an enchantment card, that's an instant card. There we go. Here's one. It's not perfect, but it'll work. I actually do have a red-blue deck, so this would actually fit right in there. But when Joyful Storm Sculptor comes into play, create 2 1/1 blue and red elemental tokens. Wait, this doesn't have Convoke on it. Whenever you cast a spell that has Convoke, Joyful Storm Sculptor deals 1 damage. Oh, come on. I find one creature. Can I find just, like, one? Is there one? Okay, here we go. I think I found one. The Sheevan Branch Burner. That's a dragon. Alright, so it costs 7 to play, just like the Sheevan Dragon does. Noticing a theme here. And it has Convoke. It has Convoke, it has Flying, it has Haste. And it's a 4/4. It's a 4/4 that costs 7 to play. Also like the Sheevan Dragon. Noticing a trend. So, I want to play Sheevan Dragon. So, Sheevan, I'm not going to write the rest of that. So, we got that thing. Alright, and now I need an order. So, I'm just going to call you guys 1 through 4. That makes me 5. That makes you 6 through 10. And that makes you 11. No, 6 through 11? No, 6 through 10? I don't know. No, it's got to be 10. So, 6 through 8. 6 through 9? 6 through 9. Yeah, there we go. And I just need some random numbers here. So, I've got just the thing. Random sequence generator. And let's just go ahead and move this one to... Oh, that's not as easy as I thought it was. Okay, fine then, we'll do it this way. Firefox does not have some of the features that I'm used to in Chrome. Kind of worth it because I don't have to worry about all the the ads and stuff, but there's some things that I kind of miss. There we go, random sequence generator. So give me random numbers 1 through 10. And so we're going to do this. And this will be our initiative. PC Unicorn says you should be able to copy this rule to improvise. It's the same thing, but for artifacts. I will keep that in mind. Alright, so here we go. Here's our turn orders. So bandits are 1 through 4, so it's going to be bandit, bandit, bandit. Goblins are 6 through 9, so that's going to be goblin, goblin. Can I type? Goblin. 10 is going to be the dragon that I want to summon. 6 will be a goblin. 2 will be a bandit. And 5, of course, is me in last place because why not? That's where I always end up. Now, of course, I can always redo this and put everything so that I'm first. And I can totally do that because if I just move everything down, then I just put me on top. So let's say that I am trying to summon the Sheevan. It's actually not on the field yet. I want to summon the Sheevan and it's going to end up right there regardless. I want to summon it, but I can't afford it. Now, see, one of the things that we haven't talked about is, are these spells known over here? I do not feel the need to restrict the spells that you choose when you level up. That is to say that when you turn level 4, you're going to get 2 spells. You can control up to 4 mana at one time. I do not feel the need to restrict you to only spells that cost 4 or less. I do believe that it is implicit on you to choose spells that you can work with. Which means that if you go through and you have something set up that can get you some extra mana, then perhaps you can take spells that cost more. My immediate thought is the card Seething Song. And I can look that up right here. Seething Song. It's one of my favorite cards. And this is just a +2 mana. So it costs 3 to play, and when you play it, you gain 5 mana. So, yeah, all you're doing is just gaining 2 red mana, which if you're in a red deck, that's great. I have 4 of them. I use them regularly. They are a crucial part of my Bloodbath deck. If you have something like this, you are essentially trading off a card that has any kind of offensive use or defensive use for something that can be used as a utility to get more. So the minute that you hit level 3, you can cast this spell. And by casting this spell, it would allow you to play a card, assuming of course that there is enough mana in the area, which there probably is. It would allow you to play a card that costs 5, even though you can only technically hold 3. It would open up some interesting things. But what it means for us right now is that this Sheevan Branch Burner here, it costs 7 to play. But when we look at our initiative order here, and I've got 4 goblins on the field. Goblins are cheap. They're very cheap. If I had 4 goblins on the field, that means that I could say on my turn, given that my goblins all have turns ahead of me, I am going to skip. I'm going to essentially daze the I'm going to daze them so that they miss their next turn, because that is essentially what daze does. If I come back here and look at conditions, it should be somewhere in here. Don't show me this again. Conditions, where is it? Collapse that. Game mastering? Here we go, conditions. Bleed, blinded, broken, confused, dazed. Yeah, so dazed creatures are unable to act normally. A dazed creature can take no actions, but has no penalty to AC. A dazed creature, or a dazed condition, typically lasts for 1 round. So let's say that we inflicted dazed on all of these goblins. For every goblin that we inflict daze upon, we would gain, or we would be able to reduce the cost of the Sheevan by 1. That brings the cost of it down to 3, which means that I could technically play the Sheevan Branch Burner at level 3. Now, is this really worth my time? Do I care? Well, maybe. It's going to be a dragon. It's a 4/4, which honestly isn't that great. Not going to lie. It's kind of lackluster when you think about it. But it does have flying, it does have haste, which means that it comes out swinging. Is it worth it? I don't know. But it's an option. And if you were to build your deck that way, it's an option that you could take advantage of. And so I think that's exactly what we're going to do with Convoke. So, with Convoke, I'm going to say inflict daze upon X creatures you control. For every creature dazed, reduce the mana cost of this creature by 1. Is that perfect? No, it doesn't really take into consideration the color mana requirement. However, I think we can go ahead and just rule it and say that it'll work. Whether you're paying for the general mana or you're paying for the actual colored mana, I think you'll come out okay. And so that should make Convoke very easy. And PC Unicorn said the same thing about Improvise. I don't know where Improvise is, so we'll just have to keep that in mind. We'll just keep that in mind. Okay, moving on then, because we gotta get going. We just gotta. Next up is Dredge. I know Dredge. I have a couple of cards that have Dredge. It is a keyword attributed to the Golgari and the Ravnica block. So, Dredge, was introduced in Ravnica City of Guilds. I would have swore Dredge was older than that. Dredge is a recursion mechanic where the owner of a card to graveyard with Dredge can return the card to their hand by choosing to skip their draw and mill cards equal to the Dredge number. That number is written on each card, but Dredge only appears on green and or black cards, except for the land Dakmor Salvage. So, Dredge rates near storm as an unsalvageable. Okay. This one might actually have no place here. I need to look at this. So, here's a Greater Moss Dog. It costs 4 to play. It's a plant dog, and it has Dredge 3. So, if you would draw a card, you may mill 3 cards instead. If you do, return this card from your graveyard to your hand. Here's a problem that I see. I don't think we need this. So, in Magic the Gathering, there are rules. Rules, for example, that say you are not allowed to summon more than 4 copies of you can't have more than 4 copies of a card in your deck. So if I want to have Raging Goblins in my deck, I can only have 4. Unless you're playing Commander, which you only have 1, but we're not playing Commander, we're talking about just constructed rules, you can only have 4. Now, the reason you can only have 4 is because if you could have more than 4, you could literally run entire decks of just 1 or 2 creatures. So to enforce diversity in the playstyle, you can only have so many. There are some cards that can skirt this, there are some tactics that can skirt this, but in general, that's the rule, that's why it's there. Dredge is a way to subvert that. With Dredge, you can turn one card into many cards. I mean, I could put one Greater Moss Dog in my deck, and assuming that I have drawn it, assuming that it has been on the field and it has gone to the graveyard, I can now continue to draw the Greater Moss Dog over and over and over. Now, the downside is every time I get this one card back, I'm losing 3 others. This is not a good long-term strategy for the Greater Moss Dog. There are other dredge cards that I would probably be a lot better for this. The point being, though, is that it lets you subvert that 4 limit, and you can just keep drawing the card again and again and again. But we already have that. There is no card limit in our Pathfinder module. If I have Raging Goblins and I choose to summon a goblin on every single turn, I can have an entire army of goblins until I run out. Technically speaking, at level 1, I can have 3 Raging Goblins out, if that's what I want to spend all of my points on. At level 2, that doubles, and I can now have 6 Raging Goblins out. There's nothing special about a Raging Goblin. It's a 1/1 Goblin. It does have haste, which is nice, but still, it's just a little 1/1 Goblin. When we convert everything over, it's essentially going to have just 11 strength and 11 constitution, which means that it gets no strength bonus. It gets no it gets no constitution bonus to its health. As a matter of fact, it's small, so it's going to take a penalty to its strength because it is small. I see no reason to limit the number of creatures that you can summon at any given time. And because of that, all you're doing with Dredge is spending 3 of your spells per day to get 1 Greater Moss Dog back, instead of simply summoning another Greater Moss Dog. And in the case of the Greater Moss Dog, I'm looking at it and I'm like, there's no reason. There may be some niche cases where this is important. For example, if there is a card that has an effect when it is dredged. So if it says, if you dredge this, it does X. And so we're going to write the rules for it, but I don't see this being important. So Dredge is going to use, and let me make sure. This it only returns it to your hand. It doesn't even return it back to play. So I can't even say that if you pay the dredge cost, you can ignore the mana, because you can't. So God, how do I do this and still make it somehow usable? So your hand and your library are essentially the same thing. We're going to be taking away from your spells per day. This one is actually more complicated than I thought. I don't even know. Oh, hey, look, a distraction. It's JP. Hello, JP. I could use a distraction right now. Good to see you. JP says, "Hola from Mexico, y'all. Just popping in for a few to say hi." Well, I hope you're enjoying Mexico. Don't drink the water. Okay, back to Dredge. God, this makes no sense in the game. I mean, it makes sense in Magic the Gathering. It doesn't make any sense in our game. But that's what we're here for. We're here to translate, and some things don't translate well. It's like trying to translate Japanese to English. Some things just do not have a direct translation. So, given that it doesn't have a direct translation, perhaps we need to just translate the spirit of it. And in spirit, what is it doing? In spirit, it is taking a dead creature, or a dead anything, I suppose, and bringing it back to use. How do we translate that to work for us? I mean, we can't use it as a thing for like when we run out of spells per day, because we need spells per day to actually make this function. JP says, "It's very relaxing. Thanks. Glad to be away from 2 feet of snow, having brunch and booze on the beach." Well, that sounds good. I mean, I wouldn't know anything about it. Even if it was the middle of summer, I'm nowhere near a beach. I was never a beach person anyway. I mean, water and sand and... yeah, it's not my thing. I admit I'm kind of stumped by this one. Because some things may have dredge effects, I have to put in a rule for it. I just don't know what it's going to be. So instead of spending more time on this, I think I'm going to skip it for now. I'm going to skip dredge for now, and we'll come back to it at a later time after I've had some time to think about it. I gotta put some time in on this one and think about how I'm going to work it. So we're going to move on. Next is going to be transmute then. So let's find transmute and hope that that one's easier. Alright. Transmute. Keyword ability from the Ravnica block aligned to the Dimir Guild. Alright, let's take a look. Transmute works by allowing a player to pay the transmute cost of a given card, discarding the card, then searching their library for a card with the same converted mana cost as the discarded card. Transmute was created by this person, only appears on black and blue cards. There are no limitations on the cost, but all printed transmute cards are 3 mana, 2 of which are colored either 1+2 white, or 1+2 blue, 1+2 black, or 1+ blue black. Alright, so let's take a look. Here's an example. Muddle the Mixture. So, Muddle the Mixture costs 2 blue, and it allows you to counter a target instant or sorcery spell. Okay, sure, great, whatever. It's blue. Of course it's going to counter things. It's everything that blue does. However, if we pay 3, so just the same 2 blue, plus 1 more, we can transmute it. Discard this card, search your library for a card with the same mana cost as this card, so 2. Reveal it, put it into your hand, shuffle, and transmute only as a sorcery. Again, we get back into why. Now, the reason why this is in Magic the Gathering in the first place is because you can only hold 7 cards at one time. You can only cast from those 7 cards at one time, in the best case scenario. With Muddle the Mixture, it allows you to find the card that you need because you are essentially blind to everything else. But you don't need that. As a planeswalker, you have access to everything that you know. If you know how to summon a goblin, you don't need to wait to summon the goblin, you can just do it. Meaning that transmute doesn't really have a place in here, even more so than dredge. There is no reason to have this, as near as I can tell. It says here, unlikely to return. R&D have soured on tutoring mechanics as they make games play out too similarly. Individual tutors are considered to be fine, but they don't currently plan to do whole mechanics like transmute anymore. So, I think it's pretty much depreciated in the actual game, and I don't see a need for it in our game either. This does not benefit you as a player at all. So I think that we can just go ahead and say transmute not applicable. Okay, moving on then. Bloodthirst. This is one that I actually do know. Although I thought it was older. So, Bloodthirst came in the Ravnica block. It's associated with the Gruul Guild. I think they're a red-black guild. I'm not sure, though. It's first created by Brian Schneider. It works by putting number 1/1 counters on a permanent, so far only creatures, as it enters the battlefield if the opponent has been dealt damage this turn. Originally, Bloodthirst was a Gruul mechanic, limiting it to green and red cards. After a cameo in Future Sight, it returned in 2012. This is actually a rule that I am familiar with. I have a few Bloodthirst cards, even though I really don't use them. Let's take a look. Gristleback. So this is a beast that costs 3 to play. It has Bloodthirst 1. So, it's a 2/2. But, if, because of the way Magic works, and, maybe I should pull that up. Can I pull that up? Rules. Golden rules, cards, permanent zones, yes. Turn structure, here we go. So, here we go. And this is very, very important if you're playing a Bloodthirst deck. You've got to know your turns. So, you have your beginning phase. This is where you untap everything. Pre-combat main phase, where you can play cards. You have your combat phase, which is where actual damage is dealt. Attackers are chosen, blockers are assigned, etc., etc. Then you have your post-combat main phase. This is where Bloodthirst comes in. Like, exclusively. This is where Bloodthirst comes in. Because if your opponent has taken damage during the turn, anything that you play now will trigger Bloodthirst. This seems actually very easy. But I do believe that it's going to be a convoluted rule in Pathfinder. The reason being, the easiest way to do this would be to simply say that if any of your creatures dealt damage to a target before or since your last turn, then Bloodthirst applies. Now, that seems simple, however, if we go back to the example where I'm the Planeswalker and I have 4 goblins on the field, I have to keep track of if any of my goblins actually did any damage. Now, to be fair, I'm looking at this from the perspective of a game master, in which case I'm keeping track of anywhere from a few to maybe even a couple dozen different things at once, whereas the player, they're only really responsible for keeping track of their own character, and in this case, maybe even some of their creatures. I do not think that it should be too much to ask of the player to keep track of whether or not their creatures did damage. So this is mostly just kind of a pain in the ass for the GM, and let's be fair here, nobody cares if it's too much for the GM, okay? If it's too much for the GM needs to be better. That's just the rules, that's how it works. So I think that's what we're going to do. Now, I do think that maybe it should also apply if the actual Planeswalker dealt damage, because it does trigger, as far as I know, does it trigger? If an opponent was dealt damage this turn, it does not specify by a creature. So if I have a shock in my hand and I can do 2 damage, Bloodthirst applies. So what I think we're going to do is this. If the Planeswalker or any creature it controls dealt damage to a target on its last turn. And how do they phrase this? Just add 1/1 tokens? Creature receives +1 strength and +1 constitution when summoned. Yeah, it's only when summoned. We have to be very specific on that. Now, the reason why this is actually kind of important is +1 strength and +1 constitution. Come on, come back here. We have to remember our sizes. So, power and toughness together determine the size. And so, every one of those tokens increases this by 2. So, if we had this Gristleback has power and toughness 2. Add them together, that's 4. And 4 is still a small creature. So it's a small Gristleback. Kind of looks like a pig. But if Bloodthirst applies and it gets a +1/+1, that makes it a 3/3. 3 + 3 is 6. It is now a medium. Which is great. I think that's fine. Yeah. I do believe that is fine. Just notice that this is apparently gone. Reach range, but it's got all the maneuvers. You know what? It's fine. Go back to that later. Yeah, I like this. I think this is going to be good. Alright, Bloodthirst. Pretty easy. So, what's next? After Bloodthirst is Haunt. What does Haunt do? Haunt is associated with the Orzhov Guild from the Guild Pack set. I know those guys. They're black and white. I have a few of their cards. I think my guild is the Is It Guild. I think it's the Is It Guild. It's red and blue, if I recall correctly. So maybe we'll see some of their cards at some point. I like the Is It's. I don't know anything about them. I just know that I like their colors, and I like their cards. Okay, Haunt. Haunt works by allowing a permanent enter the battlefield ability or a spell effect to go off twice. More precisely, it allows a card to be exiled from a graveyard, haunting a creature. And when that creature dies, a triggered ability of the haunting card is then put into the stack and allows a second usage of the card. Haunt appears only on black and or white cards. That sounds complicated. Head designer Mark Rosewater considers Haunt a mistake and has no plans to bring it back. The haunting status was referenced in the Mystery Booster test card Kaya the Ghost Haunter, showing a wider design space possible, the base mechanic. Oh, if the base mechanic was not so unsuccessful. Using double-face card technology, Disturb and Crimson Vow tweaks the haunt mechanic by having a creature on the front and an aura with the related ability on the back. I'm gonna be honest, I don't like double-sided cards. They necessitate the use of card sleeves, of which I have none. But, you know, I guess that's a skill issue. I should just buy some sleeves at some point. Maybe. Alright, anyway, let's take a look at an example and see what we're working with. So here's the Blind Hunter. It's a bat. So it costs 2 plus white and black, which makes it a very expensive bat. It's a flying 2/2. And it has Haunt. Whenever this creature dies, exile it, haunting a target creature. So when Blind Hunter enters the battlefield or the creature it haunts dies, target player loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. You know, actually this is one of those cards where I don't think we need to do anything. Not because it doesn't fit, but because it's literally so simple that I don't think we need to do anything. If I just take the rules as written and copy them in, so I'm going to copy and paste. And then I'm going to format painter this. There we go. When this creature dies, exile it, haunting target creature. We don't need to exile because the creature is just dead. Now, technically, actually, now that I think about it, exile is kind of important. Because exiled cards cannot be affected by a lot of things. That's one of those rules that I think we'll get into later. Technically, I suppose an exiled card doesn't leave any corpse, I guess, because there's nothing to target. You can't raise anything. Yeah, so I think we'll just leave this. So, when this creature dies, exile it, haunting target creature. And it's very simple. So, you can pick a creature on the field and just say, my Blind Hunter died and it is now haunting that bandit. Now, interestingly, it doesn't seem to do anything. It's just there in the case of the Blind Hunter. When the bandit dies, somebody's going to lose 2 life and you're going to gain 2 life. Now, how we're going to assign that, I don't know. Because if the target died, well, actually, I suppose it comes down to its controller. And if a bandit died, well, the bandit doesn't have a controller, which means that no one is going to lose 2 life, but you'll still gain 2. The other example is Seize the Soul. When the creature sees the soul when the creature that sees the soul haunts dies, destroy target non-white, non-black creature. Create a white or a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. There's also the Benediction of Moons. It's a sorcery. You gain 1 life. It's a sorcery. Sorceries can haunt? How does that even work? You gain 1 life for each player. Haunt. So when it's put into the graveyard, after resolving, remove it from the game, haunting a target creature. When the creature Benediction of Moons is haunting is put into the graveyard, you gain 1 life for each player. Okay, so instants and sorceries can also be haunting. Sure. It doesn't really affect anything. Either way, I think this works. The only thing we're going to need rules for exile, which we don't have yet. But this one's easy. I think that's fine. I think we can move on from there. Next is Replicate. Now, this is one I can tell that I'm going to like. Oh, look at that! It's from the Izzets. Of course it is. I like the sound of Replicate, and it's from my favorite guild. Which, by the way, I mean, we're not doing a lore stream here, and I'm not the person to do a lore stream anyway, but these be the Izzets. They're cool. So, I mean, they're Izzets, they are red and blue, and they follow Niv Mizzet. And I like Niv Mizzet, even though Niv Mizzet is kind of an asshole. So, you know, it's fine. Just don't piss off the dragon. Anyway, Replicate. Replicate works by putting copies of a given spell onto the stack for each time you pay the Replicate cost. Until Modern Horizon, each card printed with Replicate had a Replicate cost equal to its mana cost. So basically, if you put it on something like Shock, you can just replicate Shock over and over and over and over again as long as you can afford it. And for example, Shattering Spree. Shattering Spree just destroys target artifact. It costs 1 to play, but you can replicate it by paying 1 more. Now, this I think is also going to be pretty easy. Because essentially what we're doing is we're going to turn 1 spell into many, which means that we're going to be able to cast it multiple times without using more of our spells per day. Stream of Thought's also a good one. Target player puts top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard. You shuffle up to 4 cards from your graveyard back into your library. And then you can replicate it as many times as you want. So, what I think we can do is, for Replicate, we can make this very simple. Copy this spell every time you pay the Replicate cost. These spells do not count against your spells per day. Should be simple. So if you're say level 3 and there's enough mana in the area to do it because Shattering Spree costs 1 red every time you cast it. If there's 3 red mana available, you can shatter 3 artifacts. Now, it does need to be specified that, like, if you try to shatter somebody's actual, real artifact, like if they're carrying a Leonin Scimitar, and I mean, I can pull that up. That's not what I wanted. Although he is a good-looking cat. Okay, let's try this one more time. Leonin. Scimitar. Why not? Leonin, 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 Leonin. Just show me all the results. I mean, I'm just looking here for an artifact. Why is this so hard? Advanced search. Give me the advanced search. Okay, so the name is gonna be Leonin. And it's gonna be colorless. Because it's an artifact. Search. And it brings me back to him. What is wrong with this? Okay, never mind. It doesn't matter. So, the Leonin Scimitar is just a sword. It gives the equipped creature +1/+1. That's all it does. The point is that if you were actually holding onto a real Leonin Scimitar, then trying to shatter it would entitle the actual sword to a save versus being destroyed. However, if you had only seen one and you had opted to replicate one, because that's what planeswalkers do, they replicate everything they see. Everything they summon is just an echo. Shatter would be able to destroy that with no save. And if you were to use Shattering Spree and you had enough mana, like at level 3, if you have 3 red mana, you can shatter 3 artifacts at one time. It would make... If somebody against you was some kind of artificer, it would make you incredibly dangerous. Similarly, though, even though an artifact would receive a saving throw versus shattering, this would allow you to essentially sunder anyone's equipment, and you could do it multiple times. So if you were a planeswalker and you specialized in, say, things like Shattering Spree, depending on how much mana there was available in the area, if you camp across a bandit and they pulled out a rapier, you could target every Shattering Spree on that rapier and try to destroy it. Similarly, I mean, you can try to sunder anything. But maybe we'll get into things like that later. So yeah, replicate, I think, is good just the way it is. Let's move on. Next is forecast. Forecast comes from the Azorius Guild. I believe they're blue-white. And this is in Dissension. Forecast is an activated ability that a player can only use when the card is in their hand, and only during their upkeep. What the individual card does usually related to what it does normally, either scaled down effect of the spell or something that supports the spell. See the examples. The design of the mechanic was actually inspired by the unglued card Infernal Spawn of Evil. Which, just in case you're unfamiliar with it, this is the Infernal Spawn of Evil. Look upon its face in despair. It's a 7/7 that costs 9 to play. It has flying and first strike. Don't ask how it flies, the scarf is magic. And you can pay 2, reveal the Infernal Spawn of Evil from your hand, say it's coming, and the Infernal Spawn of Evil deals 1 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. Activate this ability only during your upkeep and only once each turn. It's actually funny that an unglued mechanic made it into the game. So here's some examples. Pride of the Clouds. So it costs white-blue to play. It's a 1/1, flying elemental cat. Gains +1/+1 for each other creature in play with flying. Interesting. And it has forecast. If you pay 2 plus white blue, so it's actually more than it costs to actually play the card, reveal it in your hand. Put a 1/1 white and blue bird creature token with flying into play. So you're actually rewarded for holding on to it instead of playing it. Use it, use the forecast to play, and then there you go. So how do we translate this? I think this is very easy. This has to be done on your upkeep. Therefore, it is not an instant, because you can't do it on anyone else's turn. But it's also not your main thing, because you're doing this during your upkeep and not during your main phase. Which means that it's got to be a swift action. JP says forecasts or forecast. No, it's forecasts, because you don't get to play it 4 times. Alright, so, what we're going to do here is as a swift action, you may... how do we want to phrase this? Because here's the interesting thing. You have to declare this in some way. You may activate this ability. So what is the equivalent of... What is the equivalent of revealing something from your hand? That's going to be another thing I think we need to do, because, like, how does reveal actually, how does this work? Reveal. So, here we go. Reveal is a keyword action. So these are all keyword abilities. Reveal is a keyword action. Let's take a look at these. Oh, god damn, there's a ton of them. Is there anything here that we really need to worry about, though? Keyword actions. Things like activate, attach, cast, counter, create, destroy, discard, double, exchange. We actually do need to go through these, but these are going to be a lot simpler, because these are going to be just very general things. For example, mill. We already know what mill does. Mill is going to take cards out of your library and put them into your graveyard. Taking them out of your library means that you can no longer use them, which means that we're simply taking away from your spells per day. Sacrifice is exactly that. You're sacrificing a creature to do something else. These we're also going to have to go through, but these are going to be a lot easier. And some of these may be useful, or some of these may not be useful, really. And like tap and untap, we just discussed these earlier today. Tapping is going to daze a creature. Untapping will simply kind of give it its turn back, I guess. I don't know. We'll get there. So, forecast. As a swift action, you may activate this ability. And that brings me back to reveal. And reveal means that you have to show it to everyone. So how do we reveal something in combat? This is going to get a little bit into kind of the flavor of the module. So when the ability is activated, the image... Yes, actually, the image of the... Actually, is this only attached to creatures? I need to know that. Is this only attached to creatures, or is it attached to other things? Pride of the Clouds is a creature. No. Stealing Stance is an instant. Creatures you control get +1/+1 till end of turn. Forecast. Reveal it from your hand. Target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So if you reveal it, one creature gets +1/+1. If you play it, all creatures get +1/+1. So... I was going to say the image of the creature would appear, but that's not going to work for spells. Here's what I think we can do. So this will probably not make any sense to anyone. Actually, no. I take it back. There's a rule that we can use for this. There's a rule for this. I need skills. Skills. This is a very seldom used skill, but it is one that we can use to our advantage here. And that is Spellcraft. Spellcraft. You are skilled in the art of casting spells, identifying magic items, crafting magic items, and identifying spells as they're being cast, and this is the important part. What we need is identifying a spell being cast. Here we go. Identifying a spell being cast requires no action, but you must be able to clearly see the spell as it is being cast, and this incurs the same penalties as a perception check due to the distance, poor conditions, other factors. So let's get to perception. What is our base DC for this? I don't see anything here. Nope, there's not even anything in here about spells. Okay, so what would the standard DC be for this then? I don't even know. Maybe it's not even important. Here we go. I got this. So you can use Spellcraft to identify any spell, which means technically speaking, I suppose you should be able to do this for any spell that a Planeswalker is casting. However, revealed would mean that you don't have to do. Which means, I think we can say this. Anyone can identify this spell without without making a spellcraft check. So, no matter what you're doing, anybody can identify it. and thus it is revealed. JP says, okay, done with brunch, back to the beach now. Y'all have a great day. You have a great day too. Watch out for sharks. Especially land sharks, okay? Nobody wants to meet a bullet. Okay, so we've got forecast. Now, of course, there's other effects on the cards, but it doesn't matter because we just need rules for forecast. Which means next we move on. So after forecast is graft. What does graft do? Graft was introduced in the Dissension expansion associated with the Simic Guild. I have no idea who the Simic Guild are. I'm kind of curious, though. They're a blue-green guild. Interesting. So what does it do? Wow, it really doesn't say anything. Oh, wait, okay, so it works by allowing a creature with graft to move 1/1 counters from itself onto a creature that just entered the battlefield. Thus far, only creatures that are aligned with the Simic Guild, which are green and or blue, have graft. The only non-creature card with graft is Llanowar Reborn from Future Sight. So let's take a look at some of the examples. Here we go. The Helium Squirter. Yeah, that looks like a blue card. Blue creatures are weird. So the Helium Squirter is a 0/0 that costs 5 to play. However, it has graft 3. When it comes onto the battlefield, it has 3 1/1 counters on it. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you may move a +1/+1 counter from this creature onto it. Now, this is going to require us to keep track of how many times it does this, because it is a 0/0 creature. Technically speaking, unless otherwise stated, when a creature hits 0 toughness in any way, whether that be through damage, whether that be through infection tokens, or whether that be through a loss of counters or a gain of -1/-1 counters. As soon as it hits 0, it's dead. Now, that is different than what we do, because technically speaking, when we convert everything, toughness is simply going to become part of the Constitution attribute. And people don't die just because they only have a 10 in Constitution. So what we're going to have to do is reword this a little bit. So when a creature is summoned, you may give that creature +1 strength and +1 constitution. Use this ability once per turn. Oh, wait, no. Once per summoned creature. After X turns, where X equals graft, the creature dies. That should be all we need. So even if this creature, this Helium Squirter, would technically have a 10 strength and a 10 constitution, if you use its graft ability 3 times, it dies. Period. Doesn't matter how many hit points it has left, doesn't matter what its stats are. If it uses the ability 3 times, it's dead. So that should take care of graft. Next is going to be recover. Okay, Recover is an ability that debuted in Cold Snap. It allows a player to return cards with the ability to their hand by paying the card's recover cost when a creature next goes into their graveyard. However, if they do not pay the recover cost, then the card is instead exiled. Again, this is going to be kind of like Dredge. The only difference is, with Dredge, the card goes into your graveyard. With this one, that's Grim Harvest. So, Grim Harvest, return target creature from your graveyard to your hand, and recover. When a creature put into your graveyard, or is put into your graveyard from play, you may pay 3. If you do, return this card from your graveyard to your hand, otherwise remove this card from the game. Interesting. So, I guess that means that when Grim Harvest goes into the graveyard, it can sit there. However, when a creature is put into the graveyard from play, you can recover Grim Harvest, which would allow you to return that card from your graveyard to your hand. If you don't pay that, then as soon as the creature goes into your graveyard, then Grim Harvest is removed from the game. That's not confusing at all. Was this depreciated as well? This ability was inspired by the Graveyard Order card Deathspark from Ice Age, and its gameplay intention of trying to prevent the recursion ability. However, as Graveyard Ordering matters is no longer supported in newer formats, it was changed slightly to be easier to track. Recover mostly appears on instants and sorceries, but also appears on the creature card Garza's Assassin. As with Ice Age's Graveyard Order cards, the key aspect of playing with and against Recover cards is timing when to play them and when to destroy creatures in order to maximize their effectiveness. As each, except for the aforementioned Assassin, costs mana to recover, the play pattern becomes a question as to how to attack a mana-intensive creature-based card advantage engine. I don't even understand what that meant. And given that there's only 7 cards which have this mechanic on them, I have to gather that no one else understood it either. So how do I make this work for us? I honestly have no idea. This is going to be a lot like Dredge, I think, because either... I mean, how do... This is like a combination of Dredge and... What was that other ability? Not Splice... Flashback. That was it. Because Flashback allows you to play the card directly from your graveyard as well. And then once you pay for Flashback, the spell is gone. You exile it from the game. A part of me wonders if I can just like borrow the mechanic from Flashback, because it's basically the same thing. And as a matter of fact, I think that I might. Like, I understand how this is supposed to work, because then you have decisions to make. When a creature goes into the graveyard, you have to decide whether you're going to recover this card or not. And you only get the one chance to do it. I really feel like this is just Flashback with extra steps. Well, not even necessarily extra steps. It's just Flashback with extra restrictions. It's flashback, but for a very, very limited time. And I honestly don't like how restrictive it is. What I think we're going to do is we're going to borrow from flashback. And I'm going to say, where is flashback again? It's somewhere up here. Flanking, rampage. There it is. There's flashback. Okay. So, there we go. I'm going to copy that in. However, I'll go ahead and I'll put in something extra. I'm going to say, lose this ability if not activated I'm just going to say not activated during the triggering window. That pretty much will cover it, because if you don't, then you're just not able to do it in the future. So let me scroll that back up. Okay, I don't like that one. First ability I come across that I just really just do not like. Next is Ripple. So Ripple is also an ability that first appeared in Cold Snap. I'm getting the feeling I'm not going to like Cold Snap. So far appeared on 2 instants, a sorcery, an aura, and a creature. Really? Is that it? Again, it has only appeared on 6 cards. With a perfect distribution. Look at this. It has only appeared on 6 cards. This is another one of those things that's just like... Why is this even included? Alright, let's take a look. When a player casts a spell with Ripple, the triggered ability allows the player to reveal a given number of cards from the top of their library and cast all the cards that were revealed this way with the same name as the spell without paying their mana cost. The rest of the cards are then put on the bottom of the player's library. So far, all the cards with Ripple have a Ripple value of 4. But if the mechanic was revisited in future sets, this could be altered. It was a gimmick based off the fact that Cold Snap was intended to be a triple small set draft experience, with a higher density of repeated commons. With the transition to all large set expansions and its uselessness in Commander, the odds of it returning are slim. So let's take a look. Surging Flame. Something to make me happy. I love a good red card. Surging Flame. It has deals 2 damage to target creature or player, and it has Ripple 4. When you play this spell, you may reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You may place any revealed cards with the same name as this spell, or you may play these cards without paying their mana cost. Let's just stop doing this. Put the rest on the bottom of your... Oh, yeah. So, play that card without paying the mana cost. Put the rest in the bottom of your library. So, here's what I think we're going to do. According to the rules... you can only have 4 copies of a card in the game at any given time. And so what we're banking on here is that when you get a Surging Flame, you're banking on, can you get one of the other 3 in there? Now, we don't have cards necessary to play with, but we do have dice. So we may actually use dice here. Here's what I think we're going to do. You could potentially, perfectly draw 3 others. So you hold one, you're playing one. In a perfect universe, you're going to ripple 4, and you're going to draw 1, 2, 3 copies of the same card, and then of course an extra one because you can't have a 5th one in there. That means that we're going to need to somehow bridge that gap. What we're going to do is this. I'm thinking a D10. And so here's what we're going to do. Because it's going to be a D10, it's going to look something like this. These are going to be our dice rolls, all the way up to 10. And what we're going to do is this. If you rolled a 10, copy the spell 3 times. 8 and 9, 2 times. 5 through 7, 1 time. And then 1 through 4, 0 times. So, what Ripple will do is, after casting the spell, roll 1d10. Copy the spell X times depending on the roll. 1 through 4. Zero times. And then 5 through 7. 1 times. 8 through 9. 2 times. And 10. 3 times. These do not count against your spells per day. And there we go. That should do it. So, while we do not have the ability to limit the number of spells you can cast per day, I mean, we could, but I'm not going to. Instead, if you wanted to, if you at level 2 picked up this Surging Flame card, and I mean, it seems like a really good card for you to pick up, given how it's going to work. Every time you pay 2 and cast this, roll a 1d10, and you could multiply the damage. If you can roll an 8 or a 9, which, I mean, that's a 20% chance right there. 10% chance? No, 20% chance right there. Surging Flame does 2 damage, which, you know, by our rules, it does 2 damage, that's a D2, and it costs 2, so that's 2 D2s. If we copy it twice, that's 6 D2s. That is a potential of 12 damage from one spell at level 2. And you can do this at level 2 6 times a day. That's not bad. PC Unicorn says, Thrumming Stone plus Relentless Rat or Hair Apparent equals evil. Actually, Thrumming Stone, all cards have Ripple 4. Oh. Is that, oh no, it's right down here. Okay, so, trivia. Thrumming Stone famously combos with relentless rats or other relentless creatures. Each time that a Relentless Rats is revealed and cast, it will trigger another Ripple 4. It is not uncommon for a Rats deck to run 20 Relentless Rats in the deck, so a Thrumming Stone followed by a Relentless Rats could flush an army of Relentless Rats onto the battlefield, each giving the other a static 1/1 bonus. So let's just look at Relentless Rats. Relentless Rats is a black card. It costs 3. It gives 2/2 rats, and here's the thing. This is the thing that makes Relentless Rats different, and maybe even all the Relentless cards, I'm not sure. Relentless Rats get +1/+1 for each other creature on the battlefield named Relentless Rats, and a deck can have any number of cards named Relentless Rats. So almost every other card is limited to 4, unless otherwise specified. What we have here is the otherwise specified. I wonder what other ones there are. Relentless creatures. Which ones are there? So, here's Heir Apparent, which was mentioned by PC Unicorn. The Templar Knight from Assassin's Creed, we're going to ignore that because we're just not doing that. The Persistent Petitioners from Ravnica Allegiance. Yeah, deck can have any number of these. So there's those. They cost 2 and they give 1/3s. They're not bad. The Nazgul one, we can ignore that. Although it does say there's a maximum of 9, which makes sense. Rat Colony, Relentless Rats. Actually, what does Rat Colony do? I'm going down a rat hole here. So Rat Colony costs 2 to play. That gives 2/1. They get +1/+0 for each other rat you control. That's a depreciated card. They're not doing the +1 or the mixed numbers anymore. Red has Dragon's Approach. This is a sorcery. So it costs 3 to play. It deals 3 damage to each opponent. You may exile Dragon's Approach and 4 cards named Dragon's Approach from your graveyard. If you do, search your library for a dragon creature and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. And you can have any number of these cards in your deck. That's an interesting approach to a burn deck. You could have a gigantic, like otherwise unplayable dragon in your deck and just keep hitting Dragon's Approach until you can bring it in. I'd kind of like to do that. 7 dwarves, maximum of 7. And then there's green, Slime Against Humanity. Is this one legal? It's not from an ungroup, so maybe. Create a 0/0 green ooze creature token with trample. Put a number of 1/1 counters on it where X is 2 plus the total number of cards you own in exile and in your graveyard that are oozes or are named Slime Against Humanity. This is just getting complicated now. Point is that I think we've got something here. When you you cast a Ripple card, you get to roll the dice and see how many times you can actually ripple it. And so how about one more? Just one more before we get out of here. The next one is going to be Split Second. It's a keyword ability introduced in the Time Spiral block. Great, time travel. Just what we needed. Split Second is a static ability that functions only while the spell with Split Second is on the stack. Split Second means as long as the spell is on the stack, players can't cast spells or activate abilities that aren't mana abilities. In a way, Split Second harkens back to interrupts, which also couldn't be responded to with instants or activated abilities. Split Second, also called Super Fast, was originally designed as an Is-It mechanic for Guild Pack. So let's take a look at the cards. Sudden Death. So Sudden Death is a black instant that costs 3 to play. It has split second. As long as this spell is in the stack, players cannot cast spells or activate abilities that aren't mana abilities. And target creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn. How are we going to translate this one? So, as long as the spell is in the stack. The spell is in the stack. Yes, spell is in the stack. I can speak. Essentially that means that this is just as you're casting it. Now, that means that it's going to be your turn. You'll have used your standard action to cast this spell. We are now waiting for the spell to resolve. Now it says that other players cannot cast spells or activate abilities that aren't mana abilities. That just seems overly complicated. What I think... Let's see. So, players cannot cast spells or activate abilities that aren't mana abilities. So we have to be very specific here. We're talking about... Or that means that it can be countered by spells or abilities that do cast mana. That means that we have to look at this from a broader perspective. It can be countered by things that cost mana. Which means that if we play in the world with wizards and clerics and paladins and druids, none of them should be able to play any spells while this is going on. Essentially, what it means is that only a planeswalker can do anything. Actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, I don't think I need to do anything. I think that we can literally just take this one as written. There's nothing that really needs to be translated. There's some things that need to be reworded a little bit, but I'm going to copy and paste this. So there is no stack. So we need to get rid of that. What we do need to say is that after this spell is cast and before it takes effect, players and NPCs can't cast spells or activate abilities that aren't mana abilities. That automatically excludes everybody except for planeswalkers, and it even restricts planeswalkers to only things that they're actually paying for. And PC Unicorn says, example, counterspell with split second cannot be countered. Basically, you can create mana, but that's it, is what it means. So tap a land or an artifact making mana. Only use full thing could do is land that pings someone or yourself, and you have something that redirects. Not sure if I understand that. What I'm understanding is that since it says you can't cast spells or activate abilities that aren't mana abilities. It seems to me that then you could activate abilities that are mana abilities. So if you had a creature that had the ability that says pay blue, tap, and counter magic or counter spell, which is not uncommon among blue creatures, or blue in general, that that seems like it would work. Maybe I actually have to look into the rulings on this one. Players still get priority while a card for Split Second is on the stack. Split Second doesn't prevent players from activating mana abilities. So, if you have a creature that does require mana to do something, you can still do it. Split Second doesn't prevent triggered abilities from triggering. If one does, its controller puts it on the stack, and if applicable, chooses targets for it. These abilities resolve as normal. So if you have a card that says, if a player plays a spell, they lose 1 life, and I know cards like that, Split Second doesn't prevent them from losing 1 life. It doesn't prevent players from performing special actions. Most notably, players may turn face-down creatures face up while a spell with Split Second is on the stack. For example, if sudden death is targeting a creature you control, you may flip up a Willbender to change the target of sudden death to another creature. It does not prevent the spell from being countered by triggered abilities. One such example is Void Mage Apprentice Decree of Silence. Can also counter cards with Split Second. Yeah. Split Second won't affect spells and abilities that are already on the stack, and if the resolution of a triggered ability involves casting a spell, that part of the effect won't work if a spell with Split Second is on the stack. So, yeah. There's a lot there. I kind of don't like it. Either way, though, I think this will work. So, after the spell is cast, but before it takes effect, which means it's a very small window of time, which it is a split second. That's what it's supposed to represent. It's not like it's going to stop wizards from casting spells on their next turn. They just can't do anything to stop you from doing it because, in theory, it just goes too fast. And so I think this will work. I do think it's a rather complicated ability. I think it's a little convoluted, but I do think that that'll work. I don't necessarily see anybody using it, but who knows? People will have the ability to make their own decks however they want to. That being said, though, it's about time for us to get out of here. What did we do today? We did Epic, Convoke, that's 2. Transmute's not applicable, but we still technically do it. That's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And we did Skip Dredge. We'll have to go back to it, but I gotta think about that one. Which means we wanted to get 10 done. We did 10. We did more than 10, actually. Which means that we're doing better than average. Okay, we're doing better than average. Still gotta get faster. But some of these are very, very difficult. So, we're going to leave it off here. And when we get back next time, of course, we've got lots more to go through. We're only up to 62 out of 175. What have I gotten myself into? Oh well, who cares? I love it. Who am I kidding? I love doing this. So, if you want to see what happens next time, all you got to do is subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon. We're getting into some weirder abilities at this point. A lot of these seem to be exclusive to certain individual sets rather than being spread across multiples. I mean, we're getting into Time Spiral now. We just did a whole bunch of Cold Snap abilities. Before that, it was the Guilds of Ravnica. Before that, it was Kamigawa. And I feel like that's probably how it's going to go forward. A lot of these are going to be just small batches of cards that are really only meant to work with each other. But we still need to have rules for them. We need to have rules for them just in case anybody wants to use them. So, if you know somebody else who plays either Pathfinder or Magic the Gathering, you think they might be interested in this, share this video out with them. Because, if nothing else, they probably have something to say about this. Either to tell me how I'm doing it wrong or to marvel at my insights. Probably not the latter, probably more the former. But if you just like me and you like what I'm doing, go ahead and leave a like on the stream. If you want to comment on something, that's what the comments are down there for. If you want to yell at me in person, though, I mean, figuratively speaking, join our Discord group. So we've got a Discord. It's primarily for these games. So hop over there, join the Discord. You can talk to me. You can talk to other people in the audience. You can even join our games. If you want to play with us, go to the Behind the Screen channel. Let me know what your availability is and what games you're interested in, and I will find a way to make that happen. So, do that, and I will hopefully see you next time for more Magic the Gathering in Pathfinder. And, until then, take care.